Okay, so 70 million of American households experience food insecurity. Food insecurity in early childhood has a negative and long-term impact on child development, specifically on self-control. So lower levels of self-control in childhood also been linked with behavioral problems later in life. Additionally, we know from the literature that food insecurity has a negative impact on puberty with earlier pubertal onset, especially in females. Again, it's been linked with some behavioral problems. So in this study, I wanted to see whether experience of early in childhood food insecurity can have a long-term impact on adolescents' behavioral problems through the link of lower self-control and earlier pubertal development, while accounting for poverty, because poverty and food insecurity often go hand in hand, but they are still separate, and we wanted to see exactly the food insecurity. So for that, in our study, we assessed poverty level and food insecurity level at 3 and 5 years old on average. Additionally, later in life, at 9 years old, we looked at their self-control level and puberty onset, trying to see that early puberty. And at age 15, children and their caregivers separately reported their behavioral problems. So in our results, actually, we did not see that long-term impact of food insecurity on a child's behavioral problems. But poverty did account for all changes, with some expected results, like higher levels of poverty did show earlier pubertal onset, as was expected, but higher levels of poverty actually showed higher levels of self-control and less delinquent behavior later in life. So, additionally, we saw some specific for gender differences. For females, we saw that higher levels of food insecurity did predict more externalizing behavioral problems directly. And in males, earlier puberty actually showed the opposite, and they had the less behavioral problems. So, and overall, in summary, not to diminish the impact of food insecurity, it actually has less impact than poverty. So in future studies, we should account exactly for poverty, not just for income, because it has a very big impact on child's life even 10 years later. Additionally, future studies should also look at externalizing problems, because we did not look at those, as depression, anxiety, and etc. And of course, we need to see why we had those unexpected results that we saw in our study. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. As I was reviewing your project, I kept thinking about that whole nature versus nurture distinction. And the connection between food insecurity and the onset of puberty kept resonating. Can you talk a little bit more about why food insecurity would connect with the onset of puberty, at least it was an early onset among girls, correct?
Yes. So it's, in our study, it was very little people who actually had puberty because it's age 9. Mm-hmm. In girls, it's more common to have it so early. For boys, it's expected to be at 13 years old, so having it at 9 would be very, very early. But again, we see in studies that what you eat really impacts your hormones and your biological changes. So it's expected if you have we can do evolutionary biology a little bit. So if you have food insecurity early in life, your body might say you need to reproduce faster. You need to do this now because you just might not survive. So now we see actually, because we have less problem with food insecurity, actually it's getting better with that. Sorry.
No, that's a good answer. Thank you for that response. Are there other good questions? It's very important work. You answered all of our questions, so thank you.
Thank you.